speak it, we mean it, yeah, we yap like that. Yeah, we yapping about life, fake fights in the grind, from deep convos to jokes out of line. No script, no filter, just thoughts on my mind. If it's real, we say it. If it's wild, we might kick back, tap in, let the beat breathe. Everybody got opinions, we got like 3. No suits, no ties, just mics and heat. If it pop in your head, yeah, it might get speak. Hey, talk to 'em. Say that then. Just yapping, baby. Just yapping. Press play, we snapping. Whole crew too active. Twist that, just yapping. Part time. Just yapping. Just yapping. Press play, we snapping. Whole crew too active. Twist that, just yapping. Part time. Just yapping. Run it up. Just yapping. Parker, we in here.
And what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Just Yappin' podcast. This is episode 2, and I'm glad you all decided that you enjoyed episode 1 enough to come back and give us a listen. This episode is a little bit more structured, and let me explain that. Episode 1, I came up with the idea and recorded within like a 24-hour period. So I had nothing planned to talk about. And I'm just going to address episode 1 real quick. Probably wasn't the best content to pilot the episode. But as I've been thinking over this week, probably wasn't the best for me, just personally, because I have a thing here. One of my key principles that I try to live by outside of my biblical worldview, is what I call the 3 R's, and that's to be real, to be relevant, and to be raw, or real, raw, and relevant, right? So being real, that everything that I say is 100% authentic to who I am, right? That I'm not trying to overreact. There's a lot of podcasters and influencers in this age who maybe agree with what they're saying, but they sort of hype it up to 11, and it's not real, and it's an overreaction. And for me, everything I say, the way I say it, how I want to be real to who I am, and not try to oversell something or undersell something, or, right? And still real, to be raw, to say the raw things. Like, I personally want to be a person who's not afraid of the hard truths. There's, again, a lot of people in this age who understand that to get popularity and to get more numbers, yet you have to sort of dull the truth a little bit. And I'm not that type of person. One of the promises that I'll make to myself, and then I'll make to the audience, whoever listens to any of my podcasts, there's going to be hard truths, and I'm not going to back away from the hard truth. And then to be relevant is to talk about things that are relevant to what the listener would necessarily want to hear. And that's where I think I necessarily didn't meet the mark on the last episode. A lot of what I said was not relevant to any of the listeners, right? And so I'll do better. It was a badly planned first episode. The whole idea of like going in blind and not having anything planned, it just didn't work out. The execution was bad. And so I want to just sort of address that. I think the content was interesting, but just for the way that I live, I think I may have crossed the line into something that I try to preach against, and that is gossip. And I said it earlier that I have a biblical worldview. We know gossip is wrong. It is a sin in the Christian worldview. And I don't know if I crossed the line, but the fact that I even had to question it later down the line. With that being said, while we're on this topic, like what is gossip, and because it is a popular thing especially amongst like the church crowd. And I hate the point that dudes gossip as well. I'm not gonna say they don't, but women are the most likely to turn something into gossip, right? And this isn't me trying to battle the genders against themselves. Like I say, there are men who gossip, but some of the phrases in this culture now that sort of just grind my gears are like, "Oh, I got tea, I'm ready to spill it." "Oh, yes, queen, spill that tea," right? And we're so, in this age, men and women, we're so just attracted to drama, and I try not to hype that up all that often. I will say, with the stories that I did tell last week, I'm not going to take the episode down. I'm not going to retract anything. I said what I said. That's another principle. That's, to me, being real. If I say something, I'm going to stand that at the moment that I said it, I meant it, and I'm not going to erase it. If something changes, 20 episodes down the line, and my opinion changes on a topic, hey, back then when I recorded it, I meant it. But now I have new information, right? And so anyway, that's just to address that. It got a little, the response to that episode. We'll address this real quick. The response to that episode, first off, it posted on YouTube, it posted on audio, and for what I don't understand, for whatever reason, it takes longer to post the first episode of, and I guess it's because you got to create the hosting site that I use has to essentially send the podcast information to Apple, to Spotify, to the different sites, and I guess Spotify takes longer to use or to set up than Apple does, because it took like an extra 3 hours to get on Spotify after it was already on Apple. But it posted on YouTube first, because all I had to do to get it on YouTube was to hook hook my host site and to connect it to the YouTube page, and then all I got to do when I post it is click the YouTube button as well, and that automatically posts. So more than likely it'll be on YouTube before it's on anything else. And so I get a message saying, hey, so the server that I was talking about, and I'm not, right, I get a message saying, hey, who are you talking to about in this time period? Now, you got to understand, I do 2 podcasts on Friday, right? So on Tuesdays, I do my wrestling and football podcast. On Fridays, I have of course I do this, but then I also do a Bible study type podcast where and I'm actually going to record that after I do this today, where I sort of open up the Bible and we break it down section by section, book by book, chapter by chapter type thing, right? Just in case you're interested, that's called Exposit. It's a whole different YouTube page, but it's called Exposit, and it's a whole different thing. I would listen to that on audio. I would listen to all of my podcasts on audio. There's no reason to go to YouTube, really, to check anything out. Just go to the audio and links. In fact, that's where I want you guys to really listen to, if I have to be honest. Because, for example, right, if I was to write a book, I would want to, sure, I would like it distributed to like a Books A Million or Barnes & Noble, but I 100% will make sure it's on Amazon. Why? Because that's where most books are bought nowadays. I know people go to bookstores, but the only list that matters is, no one cares about the New York Times bestseller list anymore, right? They care, are you selling on Amazon? Because that's where the marketplace is, right? And so for me, Spotify and Apple are the premier podcast list. And so for me, I would prefer to listen there rather on YouTube. But whatever way you can listen, that's fine. Just sort of my thoughts from the behind the scenes aspect. But so I get a message, and so at so and so point, who are you talking about? And I had done 2 episodes, 1 episode for each of the podcasts I do on Friday. So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I don't I've never shared Just Yapping in this Discord server because we're not supposed to promote anything, but also like I'm cautious on sending. Some people can be a little bit like, oh, you talk about wrestling, that's kind of weird, and I get that, and so I try to sort of hide that from this group of people, especially since the wrestling podcast, the first like 3 seasons, I probably cursed more than a sailor on 97% of those episodes, and I try to keep that away from people because that could, anyway, and so I get this message, and hey, who are you talking about here? So I go back and listen, because 97% of what I say on a given podcast episode, I have no recollection of what I say after I say it, right? And that's just sort of what happens when you podcast. As long as I've been doing podcasts, my wrestling show is going into its 5th season. It's been about 4.5 years since I really started podcasting, right? So when you podcast as long as I have, and you've done as many episodes as I've done, I don't remember what I say after I say it, right? And so I go back and I listen to it, and I go back and listen to my Exposit podcast. Did I talk about someone in this? Because I try to, when I'm doing the Bible study podcast, I have promoted that one to people in that server. Like send DMs and stuff, and I'm cool if they share with other people, right? And so I go back and listen to that at the timestamp they gave me, and I'm not talking about anyone. And so I go to the other one, and I go to the timestamp. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And so basically, I was essentially told, hey, a little birdie told me that you were talking about someone, this, that. Hey, you're wrong. And so here's the thing. When I tell a story, the story's told from my perspective, how I took it, right? Especially that story, right? How I took it, what I felt in the moment, right? And so, again, I probably should not have told the story. That whole episode was kind of not well thought through, a bad mistake on my part. But I do want to know, like, I hate this idea of like, oh, a little birdie told me, bro. This idea, and I've had Discord servers that I owned before, so we'll talk about this. I wasn't planning on it, but we'll talk about it. I've had Discord servers before that I've owned. Right, I have one for We Too Deep Entertainment, where I post these podcasts for my wrestling show, and this one, and I have some friends in there that I talk to, legitimate friends, right? I have one for my Bible study podcast that no one really talks in, but it's there for the ministry, and eventually, as if God wills, that ministry will grow, more people will join the Bible study podcast, and we can communicate that way, right? And so it's there as a resource. But and so I'll go into this story again. When I tell stories like this is why I don't think I crossed into gossip, but I got real close. I'm going to be real. I don't give names. I didn't give, right? If you're in the circle, you might be able to figure it out, and that's what happened. They figured out who I was talking about, and it wasn't like I was hiding details from them. I didn't actually expect any of them would listen, and I had no intention to have them listen to the podcast. Right? One of two things happened, and then I'll tell this story. One of two things happened. A, someone who listens to the wrestling podcast and subscribed to the YouTube page listened to the Just Yappin' episode 1 and told someone else in the server, and they shared it. Now, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, again, this is my understanding, it's spreading within the women's chat. And this is where it gets dangerous, right? And let me explain this. As someone who has had a podcast that I help, or not a podcast, I have a podcast, several of them, but has had a Discord server that I helped lead, and essentially I didn't own it. It wasn't in my ownership, but I essentially was one of the mods who really, I was the central figure of control in that group, because I was on all the time, like just watching everything, right? And so I'll tell the story of that here in a second. But from my understanding, this was the link was posted up, and I can only imagine what's being said in there. And here's how I know of what gets said in women's only chats in these things, right? Here's how I know what happens from personal experience. So let me explain the server that I had. So there was a dating app called Upward. It's a Christian dating app. It's useless now, but when it first really got popular, probably about 2.5 years ago, they had like chat rooms on it, where it was essentially like Discord, where you just went into a chat room, or like AOL. It was a lot like AOL, where you picked the chat room to go in and you could chat with people, right? And but the problem with that is, so the two that were really popular, you had like your general chat, which I don't remember what they had that labeled as, but it was your general chat, and it may have just been called Gen Chat. But then you had Bible study chat, and then being a dating app, there was a chat called Let's Get Married or something like that, or Looking for Marriage chat or something like that, right? Something silly and stupid as a title. But those were the three main chats, and I typically stayed in the Bible study chat. And a lot of times the conversation in there was genuine, a lot of debates and talking about things that really pertained to that type of thing. And I was fine. Like, and I had a lot of cool people that I would talk to on there on a day-to-day basis, right? But over time, and what happened every now and then in that chat was you would get people who were super aggressive in their debating, and they were there simply not to find like a partner, but simply to push their ideologies. And a lot of them were like Black Hebrew Israelites or something along those lines, right? And so it got very toxic, and then it's the internet. Everything's toxic on the internet, right? And so there was a group of us that legitimately wanted to have actual Bible study, right? Go figure, who would have thought, right? And so we came together, and we initially first started on Zoom. And we realized quickly it was hard to get everyone together and announce without having the undesirables in the group coming in, right? And so we decided, a group of us decided, hey, let's start a Discord. And we kind of convinced some of the people to do Discord and what it is, and it's safe, this, that, and we started the server. Well, we started eventually just doing like messages, because you don't necessarily have to be in a server to communicate with people, right? And so, but once you get past 10, you can't have any more people in a message chain, from my understanding. And they may have changed that on Discord, but eventually we had to start a server, and that's what we eventually ended up doing. And there was a group of us that sort of became the moderators, right? We in the leadership, and this server was drama filled, as you imagine. It's the internet, and part of the thing that we wanted was this isn't like, or one of the things that I proposed when we first started it was, what is the intended purpose of this server? Is this, we're going to find, is this a dating server, and on the side we'll just do Bible study? And if that's the case, let's make that known. Or is this like, hey, this is community, we're going to do Bible study, and that's the center of the and if you find love here, then so be it. And that's what we sort of centered on. I was like, okay, well, then it can't be church. It can't supplement. Like it can supplement, but it can't replace. And because I know what happens, right? I know human nature because I'm a human. A lot of people would use that community to say, hey, well, this is my church. I don't have to go to actual church. And I would argue against that. Um, and so I actually physically, I said, you guys still have to go to your church. The scripture does command that you go to a local body and gather with those brethren, right? And that's how I view it. Anyway, so we start this, and I initially wasn't the person leading the Bible study. In fact, I was speaking up when needed if things were made, or if I had a point, but I wasn't like leading it, right? And the guy we had leading, he was chosen because he was in seminary. He was really smart, really cool dude. But he ended up leaving the server after some drama happened, and we're not going to get into all of that. But anyway, so he leaves the server, and so I get a message one day, and it was like, hey, we need someone to lead this. And the leadership, so I wasn't like in the leadership, but I was like friends with the leadership. So and so they're like, so first off, we need someone to be a mod. Are you cool with that? And I'm like, absolutely. But then secondly, so then I get in, and they're like, hey, we need someone to lead, and there's only 2 men here. And I was like, oh, so you want the men to lead the group? Like, absolutely. I was like, in fact, one of the moderators, I'm gonna be honest with you, she was the one I had a crush on, like for real. And she was like, absolutely, I'm not gonna be a part of this if the women are leading it. And bro, let me just tell you, man, to whoever's listening, that was, and I'm gonna use some strong language that some people meant. That was sexy as fuck, bro. And sorry for the language. Sorry for the language if you don't agree with that. That's sexy, bro. Like, oh boy, like you. So I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. She was like, you don't want to pray about it. Again, that's like, bro, I'm moving to California. Where you at? Like, I was that tempted to, but yeah, okay, cool, yeah, I'll pray on it. Like I said, how about this? I'll accept it. I'll pray on it as well. And if in praying on it, I feel like I should, but let's just plan for this Friday. I'll lead it, and we'll see how that goes, and if God continues that, right? So I started leading this, and becoming sort of influential there in that group. And a lot of people liked the way that I led it. Because here's what I've noticed, and then we'll get into what I actually planned. What I noticed, especially in American churches, is we're so thin with like spiritual knowledge, right? If you go to a typical like non-denominational or Protestant church today, that's, you'll probably not get a heavy theological information-based sermon. Everything's emotion-based, right? And so I would come in, I'm just going to be honest, like, this is why I don't take credit for a lot of the things that I say, because I just do a lot of study, and I'll say things that people will never heard before, because but these are things that, like, if you do studying, are like commonly known, and it's not like it's special knowledge to me. And that's what I would tell them. Like, look, 90% of what I say, I don't come up with. I didn't discover it. I'm just repeating what I've heard. I'm not as smart as I come off a lot of times, right? I'm just repeating truths that I've heard taught by other people. And anyway, so long story short, when we set that up, we just had, for the day-to-day, because Fridays would be our Bible study night, but on the day-to-day, we would do life together. So we had like a gin chat and a music chat and this, that, and the third, and we didn't have gender chats, meaning like there wasn't men's only, there wasn't women's only. But it was recommended for us to vote on, for the leadership to vote on by one of the people in the server, can we have gender chat rooms? Because there's some more personal things that maybe women feel more comfortable talking to women about without the men being able to see it. And that logic makes sense. So I'll be honest with you. I was sort of against it. I was not the only. I'll be honest. So in our leadership, when the vote was happening, there were 2 dudes, 3 girls. And not a problem, because one of the ladies in there were super, like, biblically advanced. Like, she had some knowledge. She wasn't like, I'm just gonna take up for the women because they're women, like hive mind. She was like, what does Scripture say? And she was the one I had to crush on, right? And I'll just be honest. I was 26 at the time. She was like 38. Like, bro, older. It doesn't have to be older, but like spiritually mature Christian women. They're the one. Like, she was the one I wanted. She was what I wanted, right? 100%. Anyway, and I lost my train of thought there. Anyway, so but we agree. So the 3 women voted yes. I may have been the only no vote, and eventually I think I voted yes, but my holdout was, here's where my holdup is. I know how church ladies are, and I'm not saying this will happen, but I know how they are. We have to protect the group against gossip. And that's the reason I said that is what actually ended up happening was gossip happened. And it felt like the second we turned on gender chat rooms. Here's what happens in dude-only chat rooms. Dude-only chat rooms, we hang out like dudes. We may get a little emotional. We may say our feelings. We may vent a little bit. But for the most part, we're just complete idiots, bro. For the most part. And in my experience in men's only, whether it's men's locker rooms, I've been on enough sports teams to know how dudes are. We're just idiots when we're by ourselves. Like, I think ladies think we sit around in circles and tell our feelings and express secrets and oh, you got the tea. And there may be some men out there who like that type of stuff, but no, 99% of the times when I'm hanging out with the boys, we're being stupid, bro. I'm at a football game or a hockey game, or we're just hanging out at the bro's house, probably watching football, right? And we're being stupid. It's 99% of the time what men do in men-only circles. Not so certain. Not the same in women-only circles. Right? And so, now we had a rule in the server for privacy. We had male and female mods, and so females only in the females, males only patrolling the males, and there's no way you can really do that without saying the honor system, because if you're an administrator or a mod on Discord, there's no way to turn off your permissions to the women's only chat. It was simply just honor system, right? Now, I had zero temptation to go in there because I don't really care. I just don't care what women have to talk about 99% of the time. But when they're by themselves, I had zero interest in that until reports started coming to me that gossip was happening. And I went to, so we had one of the mods on the females, sort of, the girl I had a crush on. She took a break from Discord because of the gossip. And she came to me and the other dude separately and was like, hey, gossip's happening. I need a break. There's a lot going on. And we were like, okay, that's fine. So and so. And what ended up happening was one of the other female mods in that group, no animus towards her, but she really wanted to turn this into like women's social hour, right? And again, no animus towards her. She wanted to make friends, and I completely understand that, right? but it became gossip hour, and it wasn't being patrolled properly, and so I didn't want to I didn't go in there often, but every now and then I would think, I wonder if, like, right, and being like the person who has to lead this, like, I went to the other dude and I was like, bro, if they're gossiping hard, do I say something about it at Bible study? Like, do I talk about gossip and then expose that I know what's going on, right? And so, like, it all eventually came to blows when the owner of the server, the other dude, and he became a close friend of mine at the time. This was funny. I was in church. So he, at the time, he lived in Washington State. I lived in North Carolina. I still live there. He moved to another state. But at the time, he lived in Washington State, so he was in a different time zone. I think he was about 3 hours behind me. So he texted me, or messaged me, and it probably would have been about 7 a.m. where he was at, because I was just getting out of church around 10 a.m. when he said it. And I looked at my phone. I was getting in my car. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, turned it off of Do Not Disturb, and I saw the message. And before I even opened it, you know how you get your little notification and it shows like the first like 2 or 3 words? And all it said was, I may have just burned the server down. It was a DM message, right? And I was like, oh, what happened? So I go into the server, and he posted this message essentially along the line of, I'm tired of all the gossip. Y'all women need to be quiet. Now, I don't agree with y'all women need to be quiet, but I do agree with y'all need to stop gossiping. And so the principle that I live off, and so here's my message, anti-gossip, right? If you're not part of the problem, if you're not part of the solution, you don't got to talk about it, right? And so I don't necessarily live by it all the time. It's something that I try to catch myself doing, but that's the principle that I want to try to live by. If you're not part of the problem, if you're not part of the solution, you probably don't need to be a part of the situation and know about it. Anyway, the whole point of that is, men, women, let's stop gossiping about it. Let's stop spreading words. And it's kind of because what happens is in the hive mind, and people don't know, and then they recognize it. They know that there's a hive mind, but the girls want to protect the girls, and I get that. And let me tell you something right now, though, about who I am, right? I'm all about bro code, right? I'm all about bro code, right? Bros before hoes, 100%, unless the hoe is right, right? And I'm not joking. Like I'm joking when I say unless the hoe is right. Like, they're not hoes. Women aren't hoes, right? But bros before hoes, unless the hoe is right. Because here's the thing, I'm not gonna hype you up. Like, look, I will turn on a person if they do wrong, and it might affect me. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna call you out on it. Like, and what happens, and I think men are more predisposed to be like, hey, bro, what are you doing? You shouldn't be doing that. And there's a video that I watched that I was exposed to. Someone shared with me about like the sins that women get away with in church, that because men are afraid to call women out for things. And so, and part of it I agree with. I don't know if I necessarily agree with all the conclusions, but anyway, that's a whole drama. That's a whole thing. A segment I didn't plan on covering. Let's cover what I wanted to talk about. The first thing I wanted to mention was it's cold AF where I'm at, and I'm tired of it being 20 degrees and not having snow on the ground. It's too cold to not have snow. If it's gonna be this cold, can I at least have like something to be excited about? Right? It's cold, bro. It's like 20 degrees. It was there was a feels like of like 9 degrees last night. Anyway, let's start with that. Next thing is I know I wanted to keep sports and football talk sort of away from this podcast, but there's just something that's on my chest that I needed to just sort of yap about, and it's the Patriots, the New England Patriots, which is my team, so I'm a little biased, but we're the only team that the media talks about the way they talk about them, right? There's 100% media bias, and I blame the media, when really my issue is with the people who are espousing the same lies, but they didn't come up with them, right? They got it from sports media. The Patriots played the softest schedule since when, right? Since the greatest show on turf, the Rams, who won the Super Bowl in '99, played the easiest schedule of that year. Since the '72 Dolphins, the only team undefeated, played the easiest schedule that year. But we're going to give them credit for being the only undefeated team, even though the Patriots did better with the harder schedule in, what was it, 2007 with Randy Moss. But we didn't win the Super Bowl, but we went 18-0, 18-1, right? And so with a much harder schedule, but we're not going to talk about strength of schedule when it's the Dolphins or it's the Rams in the 70s and in the 90s respectively. But we're gonna, when the Patriots play an easy schedule, and we're gonna definitely critique them and criticize them, and they ain't play nobody. What are you talking about? Right? We've played again, right? And then it doesn't even go into, because what they say is, you played the hardest schedule, and they only look at strength of schedule of the opponents we played, which we can't control that. But they also look at, what they fail to look at is, like, we played the Browns, which are a pretty decent defense, and they had 5 sacks against us, and we overcame that, right? Like I'm not saying the Patriots are perfect, but we played difficult defenses. Right, we've played teams that are difficult to beat from a defensive perspective, and ran all over them, threw the ball all over them. Right, we won 14 games in a year when most people predicted us to have 6 or 7. Right, and so immediately the Patriots start having success, and what happens? They had an easy schedule. They're not really that good. So we go in and we play the Chargers. And do we have the best game we've ever played? No. It was probably the worst game since week 3 when we played the Steelers. Probably the worst game of the season since week 3. But even that game against the Steelers in week 3, we should have won if Ramondre didn't fumble the ball. Ramondre must have stuck his hands in a big vat of popcorn butter and just dropped the ball every time he touched it week 3, right? But he hasn't done it since. He's been very good at ball control. And we, even with 7 turnovers in that week 3 game, we only lost by 3 points. Because here's what happens. I arguably will argue, we have the best defense in the league. And not just from a talent standpoint, but from a play calling, being able to disguise. I mean, when you have a team like the Chargers and you have players come around and you have people like, I said this on Tuesday, when you have someone like on Slapping Mute Community Show, when you have someone like Dan Orlovsky who sure, he may not know where the back of the end zone is that he runs out of, and the only play that people remember him from, but he's a quarterback who played in the NFL. He knows how to read a defense. And when he said he was watching the game and he had no idea what the disguise was that the Patriots were running, he had no idea what formation they were in at any point in that game. When someone like that happens, or when something like Robert Spillane said that Chargers players came up to him at the end of the game and said, "Bro, we had no idea what you were running." When we're able to play like that, we have the best defense in the league. Not just from a talent standpoint, because from a talent standpoint, it's probably not the best defense in the league. And arguably, we don't get enough sacks. We don't have enough sacks for us to look like we're dominant in the front 4. But we have a lot of QB pressures. And Milton Williams from the center of that defensive line, with Tonga behind him and Barmore behind him, and Caleb Vaughn broke out, and Harold Landry, when I think he's coming back now. Like we're good. Like the Patriots defense is, I believe, the reason we're as good, and defenses win championships. And so this narrative that, oh, they're going to go in, the Texans are going to come in, and the Texans are going to throttle the offense of the Patriots, and they're not going to be able to run, and they're not going to be able, and the Chargers suck. And the problem is, here's the thing, if the Chargers would have played the Bills, and the Bills beat the Chargers, the media would have been like, oh, the Bills beat the best team in the playoffs week 1. They beat such a hard team. That's what the media would have said if the Bills beat the Chargers. Because from a defensive perspective, the Chargers actually are a harder secondary, harder pass defense to play against than the Texans. And everyone's like, oh, we got Stingley and such and such and such and such. And we have a great defense. Yeah, you got a great defense. I'll give that to the Texans. I said this when the Texans started going on this run, that they were probably one of the most dangerous teams in football. I've been consistent with that argument on Slap and Meat Community Show, that I think the Texans have been one of the better teams in the second half of the season. I'm not going to take away from that. But what I am going to say, put a pause on, is that you guys are going to sit here and say that the Patriots aren't a good team. We're a great team. And I'll tell you something. Will Campbell had a really awful game. You know what he did? He acknowledged it. He took ownership of it, and I believe he's going to play better. How are they going to stop Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter? I have no idea, but I trust that Doug Marrone's going to have our offensive line prepared and ready to. Like, it's not like we don't know what we're up against. I think we'll be ready. I think the game plan will be good. I think, you know, we ran the ball 146 yards against the Chargers, who on average only allow like less than 100 yards per game. I think we threw the ball for like 230 on a team that typically only allows like 150 yards. I believe is the number. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. Go fact check me. Y'all go find the numbers. Do your own research. The problem that I'm having is the selective research of, oh, the Texans defense is great. Yeah, okay, so was the Chargers. And don't dismantle that we only held the Chargers offense to 3 points with the weapons that they have. A team that, you know, sure, they barely squeezed into the playoffs, but they were a 10-11 win team. Like, this whole, in a division that had the Broncos win 14, 14. And, I mean, the Chiefs were somewhat competitive early in the season. So it's not like, right, until the injuries and stuff started happening. This whole idea of the Patriots are going to get blown out or are going to, look, I'm not going to say that the Texans can't beat us. I don't think they will, but sure, there's a chance they can beat us. There's always a chance they could beat us. But ultimately, I think what this comes down to is I just feel like we're a better built team that's gone through some adversity. Not that the Texans don't have adversity. The Patriots, and what really bothers me is the narrative of the media. And they try to pull all this stuff out of and make it a big deal about how the Patriots are essentially overrated. And we're not overrated, bro. We had a 10-win streak at one point. And did we play anyone, you know, exciting? I mean, at the time when we beat them, the Bills were considered one of the top teams. That was week 5. And then we went in week 6 or 7. And at the time we played the Buccaneers in Tampa, the Buccaneers were like 6-1. Everyone was saying it should have been moved to a Monday night game. And we went into Tampa and we beat what some people thought was the best team in the league at the time. And we beat them. And essentially broke them to where they didn't even make the playoffs. I don't understand how you could say, oh, you didn't play anybody. Well, we played the Steelers. They were a playoff team. Did we lose to them? Sure. By our own fault. It's not like the Steelers beat us. The Steelers had 7 turnovers and still only scored 17 points. They had 7 takeaways where we fumbled the ball, and they still only scored 17 points. The Patriots, I think, scored 14 and should have won that game, right? But we played the Steelers. They were a playoff team. We played the Bills twice, and we beat them once. And sure, they came back and beat us in the second game, but it was still a close game. We played the Panthers and absolutely throttled them. They were a playoff team. Like, if we're talking about teams that made the playoffs, we beat the Panthers. We beat the Bills once. We played the Steelers, and even though we tried to give them the game, we still made it competitive defensively. I just don't understand the narrative that we played 3 playoff teams, right? We played the Ravens, which were desperate and needed to win to get in the playoffs, and we beat them. I think we played a harder schedule than a lot of people give us credit for. But it's all media stuff. It's all this, Drake May's not good. Drake May's not, Drake May this, Drake May this. The team's not good. We're the only team the media would talk about this way. And so that's that. While we're on sports, just another topic that I'm assuming this conversation's going to happen on a national level at some point. We're going to talk about baseball for a minute. I'm not a huge baseball fan. I'm a very casual baseball fan, meaning I wait until October, see who's in the playoffs, and then I watch then. I just don't have energy to keep up for 162 regular season games when my whole argument is they need to cut the season in half. 162 games, 1, is crazy for player health, but 2, just for the casual fan enjoyment. Games in April and May don't mean anything, and that's I'm gonna die on that hill. Anyway, Kyle Tucker, used to play for the Cubs, he just signed with the Dodgers, like a 4-year, $200-something million contract. I think they overpaid for him, but anyway, and so I do agree, like, the Dodgers are buying their teams, but right, but it's not. I don't say that in a negative. That the Dodgers are buying championships again. That's what you're supposed to do in baseball, right? Take advantage of the salary system that you have, and so I'm assuming the argument will be made at some point that baseball needs a salary cap. I'm assuming that's going to be a talking point at some point from what I would call sports bro, because they're the only ones who care about the economics of sports, especially baseball. The sports bro, the hardcore fan who's like, oh bro, this is just not even fair. They're deferring money, blah blah. Like people like me who don't know what that term means. I have to go do research on that. Don't matter, right? They want to see LA play the Yankees in the World Series, right? And so I'm of the belief that every sport should remove their salary cap, and let the market control the market, the unregulated free market economy. Baseball is the absolute proof that free market economics is beneficial, and let me explain to you why. Because if you think a salary cap is needed in baseball, you would be someone who's like, the government needs to regulate the market. That's what I would. That's immediately what I associate it with, right? Here's why free market economics in baseball work. Bad spending gets punished, right? How many times have you seen a player, the Mets, for example, right? The Mets signed, a 30-year contract with, is it Bobby Bonilla? He hasn't played in the league since like the early 2000s. But on July 1st, I believe it is, on July 1st, every single year for the last like 20 years, and I think there's 10 more years on the contract, he gets paid money and he doesn't play for the team and hasn't in like 2 decades. But they signed like a 30-year deal, deferred a lot of money towards the back end to sort of keep it with under the luxury tax. And bad deals get punished. That's a punishment. We joke about it, but that's money that's money they can't spend elsewhere. Right? That was a bad business decision. That is repeatedly getting punished over the course of that contract. We see that in business, in the free market, unregulated market. Bad business deals get punished. Good business deals get rewarded. Here's the bigger issue. The issue isn't, there's no salary cap. The issue is you have investment groups and ownership groups who own these teams, right? Who their number one priority isn't the team, but the profit, the revenue that they can get out of it, the profit sharing that they can get out of it. And so they're not investing in the team by signing big name players to big contracts that could help win them World Series. They're more interested in how much money can I make out of this, right? And so the issue we should have isn't, the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Mets, spend big money on contracts to bring in players. The issue we should have is why is the ownership group for small market teams like the Royals or something like that, why are they not spending money? Why are they only worried about making money? Why are they not spending money? Right? Like the year the Royals won the World Series, they were kind of a competitive team and they spent some money, right? That's sort of the secret. The more money you spend, the better players you get, the better chance you have to win the World Series. I'm not upset that the Dodgers win all the time because they spend money. I think it's just a joke. I think it's a little bit of a it's laughable at times because of how much money they have on their team, but I can't blame them. And I don't think, guys, adding a salary cap in baseball just from a logistical standpoint, first off, let's say they got to the owners meeting and the owners passed and agreed we want a salary cap, right? First off, the fact that you think big market teams would even vote for that is crazy. That would definitely be a small market proposal. But let's say that happens, right? And there are a lot of owners who they've tried this, I think, in the early 90s when they went on strike. They tried to set a salary cap, and it failed. I think it would fail even harder now. But, like, just imagine it passed. The first thing that would happen, the players would go on strike. Because I don't think the players even want a salary cap. Because that would immediately cap earning potential for a lot of these big players, right? But just imagine logistically saying, hey, your salary cap is this, and you have these big budget teams like the Dodgers who would immediately have to redo deals or get rid of players. And the logistical nightmare of setting that up, you more than likely will go on strike, and you would lose games ultimately. And so I don't understand this big obsession with trying to over-regulate sports. Just watch the games. Just enjoy them. Do the Dodgers have a high payroll? Yes, they do. Are they going to win the World Series this year? They probably have a high chance to do so. I don't think they will, though. I think they're going to have bad games down the line, or we never know what's going to happen in the season. And just sit there, let the season play out. Enjoy sports for what it is, and don't try to overanalyze it. This whole idea of a salary cap in baseball is crazy to me. Like, I legitimately think NFL needs to get rid of their salary cap. I think NHL I think all the sports leagues need to get rid of salary cap. Whoever spends the most, that's on them, right? I mean, the NFL salary cap at this point is like $300 million, or will be at I think after the league meetings. So it's already a ridiculous amount of money in the set. Let's go ahead and remove that, because there's not going to be a team that overspends to that amount. Because again, they want to make money. And so the market, here's the one sentence explanation why I don't think sports need a salary cap. The market can contain and control itself by itself without regulation. Right? Like I said, good business deals get rewarded, bad business deals get punished. And I think that's all we need. The free market, and this is economically, this is, in sports, the free market always corrects itself. It's how it was intended to work, right? It's sort of like all these people who are complaining about like global warming or global cooling, and they're like, well, why does it get so hot here? And then after periods of long hotness, we get periods of long cold weather, which so I predicted. I told a bunch of people I work with this past summer, because it was hot this summer. Like we were like hot, like it was hot. Like I thought we were on the surface of the sun at one point. Just hot. It was a hot, long summer this year. And I told people, I was like, y'all do know we're gonna have a cold winter, and they're like, what? I'm like, no, we're not. I was like, they're like, how do you know? I was like, because the earth corrects itself. It's a self-correcting system. It's the free market. It's a self-correcting system. The market will correct itself. It's what it does. It may take some time, but left to itself, the market always corrects itself. Just like the body, right? The body has what is known as homeostasis, right? Where if something's not right, it will do everything it can to get it back into homeostasis. And you may feel bad while it's happening, but your body's trying to get yourself back into correct the way it's supposed to be, right? It's a self-correcting system. That's what the free market is. That's what baseball is right now, right? It's a because what happens in year 2 of this contract when Kyle Tucker starts to not play well? Well, that's why they included options to get him out of there, and to the option to drop him from the roster, right? Because these teams know, like, we're spending a lot of money and it may not work out, and we need a way out of this bad deal if it turns bad. Teams know that. The market knows that. I have no issue with the system baseball has right now. I just don't. All right, so let's go in. The big thing that I wanted to talk about on this episode, as told by the title, let's talk about affordability. And you're probably thinking, like, what are you talking about? This is, I'm not going to get political, but this does have political ramifications that I want to press it out by. Right? So we are in a election year for Senate and House, what we call midterms, right? Excuse me. And I don't care how you vote. Let me just press that out there that way. This isn't a vote for this guy or vote for this. What I want to talk about, and I want to talk to my team for a second. My team being the conservatives, the more Republican party. I will just be honest with you, right? That's my team. I gotta own it. Even and what I do to my team is when my team doesn't play well, we call it out, right? Y'all hate those sport fans that they're always, oh, my team's the best, even when they're bottom of the league. Like if a Dolphins fan walked up to you right now, or a Jets fan walked up to you right now, and we're like, we're the best team in the league. No, you're not, dog. Shut up, right? Start calling it. Like, I hate these fans. Like, you always got to be positive about it. No, you don't. Call out where your team sucks. Anyway, so we're going to talk to my team, the Republicans, for a minute. You're going to lose the midterms if you don't address affordability. That's the number one issue. And so and that's the only thing I'm really going to talk about in terms of politics. Because I want to give you numbers, because this affects the everyday American. Right? I'm going to tell you how unaffordable America is now. A lot of research went into this, by the way. So please fact check me if you want to. I'm always open for correction. But the numbers I'm going to give you are the numbers of living comfortably, right? And so what I wanted to look at, what I researched was how much does a single person household. So if I wanted to live by myself, no spouse, no one else. If I just wanted to live by myself, no roommates or anything, how much money would I need to do that and live comfortably? And then I did that with a 2-person household. So let's say I get married and I have a spouse and we're living by ourselves. How much money do I need to live comfortably there? And then let's say we have 2 kids. And that's the average American family, by the way. How much is a 4-person? So I looked up a 1-person, a 2-person, and a 4-person household to how much was needed to live comfortably. And then I want to compare those to wages, right? But before we get into that, we need to set terms, right? Because comfortable is probably a subjective word. So let's define comfortable. What do I mean by living comfortably? Comfortable means you can reliably cover all your essential costs, your housing, your food, your utilities, and all your other bills, car payment, insurance, right? Without feeling like you're constantly on edge. It also means having a little left over to save, maybe having some to be able to take a vacation once a year, and more so not stressing over every minor purchase, right? So, just living comfortably. Like I think we all understand what I mean, but I'm not talking about living a lavish lifestyle, right? I'm not sitting here saying you have to have the highest quality of life, and that's not what I researched, right? So let's start with 1-person household, a single person. If they wanted to live by themselves, and I'm going to give averages, I'm going to give the ranges because it differs on location. But from what I found, a person who wanted to live by themselves, taking in cost of living and everything, would need a range between $100,000 to $106,000. Again, if we take the middle of that, if we average that, it's about $103,000 for a person to live by themselves in this economy. $103,000. To live in a 2-person house, so you and a partner, right, with 2 people, you would need to bring in about $130,000 to $180,000. Again, if we took the average of that, that's about $155,000. So the average for that would be about $155,000. And then for a 4-person house, the average American family, mom, dad, and 2 kids, you would need a range. This ranges a lot because of the area, but about $187,000 to $300,000. Like in major blue states, 4-person households are expensive, like per year, right? $187,000 to $300,000. So on average of those numbers, about $243,000. So 1 person by himself on average $103,000, 2-person household on average $155,000, and a 4-person household on average about $243,000. Now let's compare that to. So we're gonna look at wages with 2 different numbers. You're gonna look at the average wage, or the mean wage, and then the median range, and they're essentially the same thing. Y'all remember learning about mean, median, mode, all of that in elementary school, middle school? What do we remember about average or mean, right? So how do you find that? You take all your data points, you add them all together, you divide it by the number of data points. So if I had 10 numbers, I'd add the 10 numbers up and then divide it by 10, and that's your average. Now the problem with average when we're talking about wages is that if I have 10 data points and 80% of them, or 8 of those 10 data points, are in between, let's say, 40,000 and 50,000, and then I have the last 2 data points are extreme hyperbole, or not hyperbole, what was the word I'm looking for? Outliers. That's the word I'm looking for. Extreme outliers. Say 250,000, 500,000, right? The larger numbers have a larger impact, right? So that'll have a higher average salary. So the average salary in America, finding the mean or the average, is about $60,000 to $65,000 a year, right? But that's not very realistic to the actual middle of the country, because just taking the average, really, the high earners they skew that number. So the median, if you remember median, how do you find the median? Well, you line the numbers up from smallest to largest, and you take the middle number, right? So if you have 10 data points, it would be hard to find a middle number. You would have 2 middle numbers, and then you would average the middle number together with a 10 data point set. But the median income in America, which is what most people can expect to make, and it isn't skewed and really doesn't take into account the high earners, is about 40 to 50,000. So you could take the average of that and say about $45,000 is about the median income in America. That range of about 40 to 50,000. So compare that to the price to live, right? And you realize that it's impossible to live comfortably in America. And so this is why we have to account for affordability. Now, I'm not a financial expert. Like I said, these are a lot of just numbers that I found or have heard. But I want to. These just seem like numbers. These don't seem practical. So I want to make it real to me, and I'll give you my real life stuff, right? And I'm not afraid to do this, right? Let's make it real to me as a human being, right? And I want to show you how much purchasing power the American dollar has lost in the last 26 years. So from 2000 to now, here's the claim: we've lost 33% of our purchasing power. Let me show you what I mean by that. I make about $40,000 a year. I'm within the average, I'm within the median salary, about $40,000 to $41,000 a year, depending on bonuses and stuff like that, right? That's pre-tax, by the way. So what I wanted to know was, accounting for 2026 inflation, what would my $40,000 today have been worth in 2000, in 2010, and in 2020? And I chose 2020, one, because it was the start of the decade, but two, a lot of our inflation started in 2 periods, 2008 and 2020. So that's why I have 10 and 20 here, right? So in the year 2000, the purchase for the $40,000 that I make today would have been equivalent to, would have had the purchasing power of $75,000 today, right? So imagine in today's economy, if you're making $75,000, right, now in 2026, you could, and know what you can buy and how you can survive. You could have done that with $40,000 back in 2000, right? So essentially, that's a huge number in loss, right? Right. So life used to be super affordable in 2000, right? Well, then in 2010, the $40,000 that I made in 2025, right, would have been equivalent to making the same or it would be equivalent to making $59,000. So there's a $19,000 difference, right, in that purchasing power. But notice between 2000 and 2010, we already have a loss of almost $20,000 of loss of purchasing power, right? But then notice in 2020, right? In 2020, that was 6 years ago, by the way, right? $40,000 would have been, in today's money, would have been equivalent, would have purchases the same amount at $50,000, right? So the dollar has lost $10,000 worth of value in 6 years, right? Much less if we look over. So 2020 to 2026 is what most people care about because of the loss of inflation. I'm gonna read some numbers here in a minute of how much things have gone up since 2020 in the CARES Act and what we call quantitative easing, and essentially the government's plan is print more money, print, kick the can down the line. We've been doing that for like 50, 60, 70 years, right? But from 2000 to 2020, we lost $25,000. This is a 33% loss of purchasing power in 26 years. In 26 years, your money is worth 33% less than it was 26 years ago. Today, 33% less than what it was worth 26 years. In one generation, right? In one generation, we've lost. Now, so take all of that information that I just gave you about cost of living and wages and loss of purchasing power. So what do I mean by that? We make less money today than we made in 2020, right? So what does that mean? So not only do we make less, but we can afford less. What do I mean? Well, let's look at the what is known as the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. The price increases in the last 5 years. This is from 2020 to the end of 2025. Coffee has gone up 100% in 5 years. The price of a dozen eggs has gone up 83%. Ground beef, 69%. Auto insurance, 63%. Gas utilities, 46%. Fuel, 45%. Transportation, 43%. The price of a home has gone up 43%. Electricity, 37%. Gasoline, 36%. Eating out or food away from home, 30%. Shelter, 28%. Health insurance, 26%. Food at home, 25%. Used cars, 19%. And new cars. So the price of a car, whether new or old, has gone up 19%. So we make less money than we did 5 years ago. And everything costs much more than it did 5 years ago. Now, I don't want to be the person who complains all the time. What's the solution? What can we do? Well, we can't do anything. We're not going to vote our way out of this. That's why I started this by saying it's not about who you vote. I don't care who you vote for. We're not going to vote our way out of it. What the government needs to do, and what we need to hold them accountable for, because they do work for us, is they need to leave Keynesian economics. With the Keynesian economics essentially says the more we print, we need to go into more debt to make money, right? The more we spend, the more money we can make. Essentially, and that's just completely ass backwards if you ask me. But excuse me. We need to do exactly what Warren, I don't even know his first name, President Harding in the early 20s, and then that eventually transpired over to Calvin Coolidge. What they both tried to do is they realized that, And what President Harding recognized was a lot of the wealth in America in the late teens, early 20s was fake wealth produced by the war, the World War One. And so he said we need to deflate the economy. Essentially, he popped the bubble. And what that did was then allowed the market, free market economics, by the way, it allowed the market to correct itself. And essentially, sure, they went into you had the Roaring 20s, but a lot of that was fake wealth from the war. And sure, the Depression started under these two presidents. What I want to do here is, because I don't know the time frame that they were presidents off the top of my head. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm trying to research this to find stuff like this. So I want to set up the context to what Harding and Coolidge did, and then sort of explain what they did. And I think this is exactly what we need to go back to. And the premise was suffer now, right? It's going to be painful now. We can suffer now, and future generations will benefit. So what's the context? After World War I, the U.S. economy was overheated. There was massive wartime government spending, high inflation during the war, distorted market price from price controls. So by 1920 and 1921, the economy needed to deflate, not be propped up, right? Harding and Coolidge, in their presidencies, took the opposite approach of what we would later see when these so if Harding and Coolidge was president in 2008 when everything was crashing, he would not have bailed out GM. He would have let GM fail. He would have let the banks fail, right? That's what they would have done, essentially, right? So the core philosophy was liquidate, don't stimulate, right? Both administrations, both, I think, had Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon, I think, in both of their administrations, and that's important. The belief was recessions are corrective, bad investments should fail, government should get out of the way and not soften the blow. Classical liberal economics, not Keynesianism, excuse me. If you go against Keynes, you're in the economic world today, you're kind of laughed at, by the way. So what did they do? Massive federal spending cuts. They slashed federal spending. Harding slashed it 50% in 3 years. War agencies were shut down. Government payrolls reduced. Excesses, were removed. It popped the inflationary bubble. Coolidge continued this, famously known for saying, the chief business of the American people is business. Right? The second thing was debt reduction, not deficit spending. Federal debt was paid down, not rolled over. Surpluses were used to retire war debts. And there was no attempt to grow out of debt via stimulus packages. This established confidence in the dollar and reduced long-term inflation pressures. The third thing was, we mentioned Secretary Treasurer Mellon. He did tax cuts, but with the purpose. The tax reform lowered top marginal rates from 73% eventually got down to 25%. Reduced tax avoidance and capital flight. Encourage productive investment instead of hoarding. The point of it is the tax cuts were paired with spending cuts, right? You can't cut taxes and not cut spending, right? You have to do both. It wasn't a borrow and cut, but it was shrink the state. And that's the issue, right? Why does tax cuts not work in America today? Because the spending's still up. And so if we take in less money and we spend more money, we still are at a deficit, right? You see what I'm saying? The Federal Reserve at this time did allow deflation, which they don't allow anymore. The Fed just wants to continue printing money and bail out things. So the Fed did not rush to bail out failing firms. Interest rates were allowed to stay tight early on. Prices and wages fell quickly. Result, sharp but short recession. There was a sharp recession in 20 and 21. But what did we know the 20s for? The roaring 20s, right? Because there was rapid recovery by 1922. By 1922, you had a short recession, a lot of struggle in 1920 and 1921. A lot of struggle. There was a recession, but you recovered by 1922, and then you had the roaring 20s. Strong growth through most of the 20s, right? Pain up front, but you get the pain out of the way, and now you get the reward of it in the roaring 20s, right? Now that only lasted until the Great Depression, and I'll walk you through how we got to the Great Depression at that point, right? So, but the fifth thing, and I think this is probably my favorite, is there was no safety net, there was no bailout. The market was allowed to correct itself. No corporate bailout, no unemployment insurance, no stimulus checks, no market manipulation to maintain demand. This forced capital to move from bad uses to good ones quickly. Again, Hardin and Coolidge popped the bubble by refusing to save it, and in doing so, they produced the Roaring Twenties. It produced a brutal but brief correction and was one of the fastest recoveries in U.S. history. Long-term stability until later policy mistakes created a new bubble in the late 2020s. Give me one more second. So you then may be asking, if we had the Roaring 20s and we had this correction, how did we, within 10 years, end up in the Great Depression? Well, let's walk through that. Complacency, comfort. Because you had the Roaring 20s, there was complacency. The economy recovered fast, productivity surged, wages and living standards rose, credit expanded, right? And the success then created sort of a complacency among people. We figured it out. We know how to manage the economy, which then the Fed, the Federal Reserve, created a new bubble in the late 20s by reversing course. And here's what they did. They held interest rates artificially low, expanded credit to support growth, explicitly tried to stabilize asset prices, which fueled massive stock market speculation, margin buying, and asset inflation detached from fundamentals. It was central banks doing what central banks do, and is the problem with Federal Reserve, by the way. The Fed's going to Fed, essentially what I said, right? So when the bubble popped, policy panicked instead of correcting. After the 1929 crash, Harding-style response would have just let prices adjust, let the bad debt clear, and maintain liquidity, but not prop up prices. But instead, what the Fed did was the exact opposite. Between 1929 and 1933, the Fed allowed the money supply to shrink 30%. Thousands of banks failed. Credit collapsed. Deflation spiraled. They didn't just do nothing. They made it worse. They turned a crash into a systemic depression. Hoover then abandoned the sort of Coolidge-style economics that we had with Harding and Coolidge. Hoover was very hands-on, even though he's sort of remembered as hands-off Hoover. He was very hands-on. He pressured businesses to keep wages high. He raised taxes with the Revenue Act of 1932. He signed the Smoot-Hawley tariffs collapsing global trade, and expanded public works and federal intervention, which resulted in high economics, prices that couldn't high unemployment, prices that couldn't adjust, trade collapsed around the world, and recovery stalled. And then enter in FDR. FDR didn't cause the Depression. By far, it was not FDR who caused it, but he more than surely prolonged it to be longer with the New Deal. Prices and wage controls with the NRA, agricultural destruction to raise prices, constant rule changes equals business paralysis, punitive taxes and anti-capital rhetoric. And so the capital sat on the sidelines because no one knew what the rules would be tomorrow, right? So why didn't they repeat the 1920 and 1921 model? I don't know why, but it didn't repeat. And the Great Depression wasn't because of capitalism failing, but because of intervening on every stage of the corruption. It's government's problem. Right? Government caused the Great Depression. Government intervention did. Anyway, so I just wanted to sort of discuss that and end this part of the podcast by saying, Republicans, if we don't get out of government, so the solution is just let the bubble pop. Just let the bubble pop. Get government out of it. Lower government spending. Let the bubble pop. Do what Harding and Coolidge did. And we're gonna have to suffer, right? And unfortunately, the boomers aren't gonna suffer as much, but they're the only ones really making money anyway. So, and they just kicked the can down the line. So that's just something I've been thinking about, doing a lot of research on, and I wanted to yap about it. So take that as you is, Republicans. We got to address affordability, or you're going to lose the midterms, and you're going to lose the presidency in 28. I 100% am going to stand by that, unless someone else could show me anything differently. All right. 2 more little things real quick, and then we'll go home. The first thing is I'm kind of over X, man. Elon bought X, and I was like, maybe it'll be usable again, and I'll not be, blocked, banned. Literally had my Twitter account banned in 2020. And so Elon bought the company. I had a secondary account already anyway, and I was like, okay, maybe Elon will at least not ban people for free speech, right? But what we got instead, I think I want to go back. I think I want to go back to Dorsey, bro. Elon, all you got to do is clean up 2 things. Here's what I'm tired of with X, man. These porn bots all over the place, bro. Like everything you post, I'll post like something like biblical, right? Or an opinion that's on the Bible or something. And I'll get a notification, so-and-so liked your tweet, and it's a porn bot. And I laugh. I laugh at it. But you'll see it's all over the For You pages. And they comment on everything. Now another thing I'm over is Grok. More so the posts now with these porn bots where they'll post like a picture of them scantily clothed in like workout pants. I'm like, you could do whatever you want with me, because now with Grok you can just reply, hey Grok, put her in a such and such, and you got a lot of deviant pervs on the internet and be like, Grok, put her in a bikini or whatever, right? And Grok will then post a picture, AI of course, of her, right? And I'm just so tired of seeing those posts. I really am. They're all over the place. The algorithm is completely broken, and it promotes stupid stuff that no one wants to see. And it's been a complaint since Elon bought the company. Hey, you got to get rid of the bots. You got to get rid of the bots. You got to get rid of the bots. And they just keep showing up. And yeah, it's kind of a problem. And then the last thing, really why I'm over, is just the content on the app is all curated for clicks. Nothing is real amongst most of the content creators and influencers there. It's all curated for algorithmic clicks. And so it just feels fake. If it wasn't for like sports Twitter, I probably wouldn't even be on X, to be honest with you. I just don't care. Like, part of me really is considering deleting it as it is. And it's just a waste of time at this point. So that's that. And then, we're going to do this segment, what I'm going to call Respectfully, of course. So have you guys ever seen that guy on social media? I see him on Facebook because I don't have TikTok. He may have TikTok or YouTube Shorts or something. I don't know his name. I can't tell you that. But he does these videos where he's like, smash. Respectfully, of course, right? There's a white dude with a beard, and he like rates different, like it'll be like WNBA players on such and such team, and he'll go through and like smash. Respectfully, of course, right? So that's sort of what this is. Respectfully, of course, is going to be the name of this segment. So here's what happened in my in my Slap and Meat community show. Used to be known as the Slap and Meat Wrestling Show, our wrestling podcast, and I had a co-host about a year ago that I decided I no longer we went through this, I just wanted to change the way the podcast was run, and so I decided to go solo again. But when I had a co-host, we used to do a segment, because that show gets released on Tuesdays. We used to have a segment called Thirsty Tuesday, and we did a bunch of brackets, or where it was like this person or this person, right? And eventually we would have like a Discord, hottest woman of this segment, right? Of this category, right? And we did celebrities. Being a wrestling show, we did wrestlers a couple times. And it's not like, I want to say this isn't like a lustful type thing where it's like, oh, but it's more so just, I think it's normal for human beings to see beauty and admire it, and not necessarily have it be a bad thing. I think purity culture in America has gone too far to say that if you're attracted by a woman, that you're immediately lusting. Like, lusting requires a heart intent of wanting to take that person, that woman, and use her for your own benefit. And I'm sure this can turn into that, but that's not what this is. But anyway, so I went to that co-host. His name's DJ Wavy D. Shout out to him. And I said, I want to bring something like that back, but instead of having the Discord vote, it's just going to sort of be me on the show making my picks. Here's what I want you to do. Rather than me picking and being somewhat subjective and picking and who I pick, I want you to give me a list of 32 names, and we'll run this bracket. Right? And it's just going to be my vote, not the Discord vote, right? And he said, okay, I got you. And he gave me 32 names. Now, I withheld for myself the right to change 2 of them. So there were 2 people on this list, in this bracket, that I withheld the right. That didn't mean I was going to use it. I did end up using it. Because one of them I didn't think I would have to change. I thought maybe they would be part of the list. And then the other one is just someone that the 2 people I released from his list, I didn't necessarily want in the list. And I don't even remember who they are off the top of my head. I know one was Angelina Jolie, but I don't remember the other one. And it's just because Angelina Jolie is like 50, and all these other girls are like 36 or like younger, right? And so I didn't feel it was easy or within my range to really, because the question that I'm asking is, respectfully, of course, would I date you if given the opportunity? And with Angelina Jolie, the answer is just no. But just because you're 50 years old, and there's nothing wrong with being old, it's just no, right? I mean, I like older women, but not 50, right? I think my age bracket stops at about 37, right? So, with that being said, now there are some that are a little bit older, and it's not extremely consistent, but I reserve the right to change 2. So with that, we're going to go through the 32 names, which means there's 16 first-round matchups, and we're going to go through all of them real quick, and then we'll do round 2 next week, round 3 the week after, round 4 after that, and then the finals will be round 5, right? So let's start. Now, the seeding was made. The seeding of literally was just the order that he sent these to me in, right? So I didn't manipulate anything. I didn't pick this list. That would be DJ Wavy D. If you have issues with the list, other than the 2 that I added, that is on you. All right. So these are celebrities, and he clarified, because I typically talk about wrestling, he was like, do you want wrestlers or just celebrities? And I said preferably celebrities, but there's some WWE women who are sort of celebrities in their own right, so you can include them if you want to. And so there are some wrestlers on here. But anyway, round 1. Let's start here at the top. We have Margot Robbie versus Paige Spironic. So remember, the question is, if given the opportunity, who would I rather date of the 2, right? And that's how each matchup is judged, right? If given the opportunity between these 2, here's 2 names, just on these 2 names alone, who would you date of these 2, right? And Paige Spironic with the upset. 32 seed, Paige Spironic, 100%. 100% on this one. I don't really have a reason. Again, a lot of these don't have reasons. I'm going to be honest with you. It's just because I don't try to think logically when I do fun little segments like this. It's just, okay, here's the 2 names. Who do I want to pick? Right? Split decision. If someone throws this in front of me, you have 30 seconds to make a pick. Who are we calling to go on a date with you, right? That's sort of what I'm looking at here, right? So, matchup 2, Taylor Swift versus WWE wrestler Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch, without a doubt, Becky Lynch, right? Jennifer Lawrence versus Kendall Jenner. Kendall Jenner, without a doubt, Kendall Jenner. Anya Taylor-Joy versus Emily, I don't know how to say your last name, Ratajkowski. I think it's how it's pronounced. And it's Emily Ratajkowski. It's probably learned to say that name. Gal Gadot or soccer player Alex Morgan. Gal Gadot. All day. She can be my Wonder Woman. I don't even know if she's Wonder Woman. I know she's a superhero. I don't remember which one. I hope that I'm not pop culture sort of certified. Gal Gadot. Let's check this out. Was she Wonder Woman? She was. See, I didn't even watch the movie, but I got it. She could be my Wonder Woman. Anyway, Bianca Belair, WWE wrestler. Everyone knows she's one of my favorites. Everyone who's listened to the wrestling podcast knows Bianca Belair is my kryptonite, right? But she's going to go up against one of the girls that I did make a change for. And that is she does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's like a influencer. I hope I say her name right. Reina Vallandigham. She's Indian. And she's the one I'm picking over Bianca. I know, crazy. But there's just something about someone who can do martial arts. You know what it is, right? Priyanka Chopra versus WWE wrestler Zelina Vega. We're picking Zelina. I like short Latinas. That's literally the reason that went through my head. Short. She's like 5'1", and she's Puerto Rican. And, that's two little things that match with me. You know what I'm saying? Anna de Armas versus Alicia Schmidt. Look, I'm not saying Anna de Armas isn't dateable, but there's just something about Germans. Alicia Schmidt is my pick. Simone Biles versus Scarlett Johansson. I have a thing for short people. 100%. It's Simone Biles. I don't know what it is. Simone Biles. Selena Gomez versus Sydney Sweeney. This one's easy. I'm going with the one that has the good genes. Sydney Sweeney. Gigi Hadid, I don't know, versus Emma Stone. Gigi Hadid. This was a matchup that neither of these two are going to win. I'm just going to go 100% with you. So, Gigi Hadid. Hailey Bieber versus Blake Lively. I've never found Blake Lively attractive. I'm just going to be honest with you. Hailey Bieber. Florence Poe, or Pooh, I don't know how she says it, which, by the way, love her. Or Olivia Culpo, and we're picking Olivia Culpo, 100%. Bella Hadid, and the one that I thought was going to be on the list, but it wasn't on the list, so I had to put her on the list. Sabrina Carpenter. Sabrina Carpenter is winning this matchup. Rihanna versus Dua Lipa. Nothing against Riri, but Dua Lipa. And then the final matchup for round number 1 is Zendaya versus Alicia Lemon. And Alicia Lemon wins over Zendaya. So what does that mean? Round number 2 has the current 16 here is going to be battling Paige Veronica, Becky Lynch, Kendall Jenner, Emily Ratajkowski, Gal Gadot, Raina Vallandigham, Selena Vega, Alicia Schmidt, Simone Biles, Sydney Sweeney, Gigi Hadid, Hailey Bieber, Olivia Culpo, Sabrina Carpenter, Dua Lipa, Alicia Layman. We will battle those 16 next week. Remember, this was all respectfully, of course. And so we'll end this with questions from the Discord. Now, I received a lot of questions from the Discord for this topic, or for tonight. But I think, the idea of what I want to do when I explained it on Tuesday didn't go through to the wrestling fans in the Discord. So let me explain, just in case y'all are listening to this. Tuesday's show, the questions about football, NFL, and WWE wrestling will be answered on Tuesdays. I want the more, because we used to have like the deep theological, deep philosophical, more pop culture questions. That's what I'm looking for on Friday, right? So the wrestling questions that were asked when I asked for questions yesterday, I'll get to those on Tuesday or Monday for the next episode. And so the only real question that was asked that I'm going to touch today, because it's the only one that's not on the topics that I cover on Mondays or Tuesdays, is if John Cena ran for public office in your state, would you vote for him? The answer is no. Absolutely not. Too much of first off, I don't necessarily like celebrities running for politics, but secondly, he's too much of a suck up to China now, so that's not good at all. And so with that, if you have a question that you asked that's wrestling or football related, I promise you I'll get to it on Monday when I record Slap and Meat Community Show. Just a final reminder, I do other podcasts. If you enjoy hearing my voice, you can come watch this on Fridays. You can come listen to Exposit Bible Study Podcast on Fridays. Or you can listen on Tuesdays to the Slapping Meat Community podcast or show, right? And that's on Tuesdays, so on this channel. So if you enjoy my voice and want to hear more, that's where you can do that. Thank you all for listening to Just Yappin'. I was yapping for a minute. I got another podcast to do. Let me go and do that, right? Anyway, thank you all for listening. My name's We Too Deep, and I will see you next Friday.